All right. Thanks for having me. My name's Chmiel. I live in Athens County, so drove about an hour to get here. Who has had a Paw Paw? Okay, so a few Paw Paw virgins here. Okay, so I'm going to give you the overview of Paw Paws just to make sure everybody's on the same page here. Okay, there's a Paw Paw tree right there, so this is great prop. The Paw Paw, it's North America's largest native tree fruit, and it's related to 2,100 tropical fruits. It's in the custard apple family, which is called Annanaceae. And I went to Ohio University and down in Athens, and I made my own major. It was called Holistic Transition to Sustainability. So I graduated back in 1992, and I was like, I wanted to live in Athens because it's like this pretty great little groovy college town, and love the hills. And you may have heard that saying, you know, when you have lemons, you make lemonade. Well, in Athens and Southeast Ohio, we're really blessed with pawpaws. And so when you have lots of pawpaws, you make things with pawpaws. So I make pawpaw jam, pawpaw salsa, pawpaw salad dressing, pawpaw soap, pawpaw popsicles. And so I have a company, it's called Integration Acres, and we are the world's largest pawpaw processors. So, you know, a pawpaw can go from hard as a rock to rotten in about 24 hours. So what we do is we get the pawpaws when they're perfectly ready to be processed, take the skins off, take the seeds out, and we freeze it mostly. So back in 1916, the American Genetic Association, they had this competition for the best pawpaws. And the pawpaws grow 26 states east of the Mississippi. That's like their native range, from Florida to Ontario, basically. And people sent in pawpaws from all over their native range, but 5 out of the top 10 best pawpaws back in 1916 came from Southern Ohio, Southeast Ohio. So when I say, you know, we're blessed with pawpaws, I mean, I think there's a little bit of a, you know, at least a paper trail. But when I started, I took a lot of botany in college and was living out in the country and found a lot of pawpaws in pastures. So this does relate a lot to livestock. And obviously, Jared and Carrie have a lot of pawpaws here. And what's really interesting about, does anyone know what the pollinator is for the pawpaw? It's not a traditional pollinator. Yes? It's like flies or beetles or something. It's primarily flies, right? So when you have animals, you have flies. So what I was noticing, like in these pastures, you know, where people were raising beef cattle or horses or stuff, and there would be really good pawpaws growing there. So sort of started digging into that, and inside of every cell of the pawpaw, there are these really powerful chemicals called annonaceous acetogenins. And there was a professor over at Purdue University named Dr. Jerry McLaughlin, and he was a pharmacologist. And he was studying basically these anti-cancer fighting drugs in this whole plant family, the Annanaceae, and the pawpaw has the highest source of these chemicals. So what does that mean? It means basically cows, horses, even goats, and I'm assuming bison, do not eat pawpaw trees. So at Integration Acres, we've had 50 to 70 goats at a time, and we actually put the goats in with the pawpaws. They eat everything else. They eat, the multiflora rose, the grass, the whatever, your tennis shoe, but they don't eat the pawpaws. So there's a lot of synergistic stuff that's going on with pawpaws in and around animals. You've got the flies for pollination. The animals will eat everything else. And this is an example of silvopastoralism. It's like a different way of using a tree. To me, it was like, how do you take advantage of these annonaceous acetogenins if you're not like trying to treat yourself for cancer? So you let the animals eat the stuff around it. They fertilize the soil. And that's pretty much what we've been doing at Integration Acres. Now, I've got these little brochures, and hopefully I pass those around. And, basically, like you guys may have seen some native stands of pawpaws. But there's also this movement of growing pawpaws in orchards. Okay? So like lemon trees, lime trees, orange trees, those were all understory trees originally. And then people started planting them out in the sun in an orchard setting. You get more fruit. Same thing with pawpaws, right? So we have an orchard of pawpaws, but we also manage wild stands of pawpaws. So in here, kind of talk about some of the things that we do in a native stand of pawpaws. Does anyone here have pawpaws on their farm? A couple folks, okay. So, because they grow in a patch, and I don't know, has anybody ever heard that song "Way Down Yonder in the Pawpaw Patch"? Okay, we're gonna sing it real quick because there's a lot of history with pawpaws in America, actually, and it is the official state native fruit of Ohio. It was signed into law back in 2009, and other states now have made the pawpaw their official state fruit as well. I think Missouri or Kansas or somebody, but anyways. Where, oh, where is pretty little Susie? Where, oh, where is pretty little Susie? Where, oh, where is pretty little Susie? Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. Come on, boys, let's go find her. Come on, boys, let's go find her. Come on, boys, let's go find her. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in her basket. Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in her basket. Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in your basket. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. Okay, that's the gist of it. A couple notes, though. Okay, come on, boys, let's go find her. Are pawpaws aphrodisiacs? You tell me. It sounds like it from the song. Okay. But, back in history, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, all the founding fathers of this country who, like, I live on the Meigs County line with Athens, and my surveyor was George Washington. And one of his favorite desserts was chilled pawpaws. So I think pawpaws are a really special plant. That's why I've sort of dedicated my life to pawpaws. I got a pawpaw tattoo. I hope somebody has a bison tattoo here. I mean, aha, good. And I do host the world's largest Pawpaw Festival, which is in September, and it's over in Albany, Ohio, which is, I don't know, about an hour and a half from here. And this year is going to be our 25th year. So please come on out. And I think Kevin Morgan did your guys' logo. Yeah, so Kevin is our graphic designer, a good friend of mine. And he does a lot of great graphic design work for other people. Possibly the best festival in Ohio. Yeah, it's pretty groovy family festival. We have lots of kids stuff. We have lots of educational things. We have we have this thing called the Ohio Country Fair tent. We have a whole pawpaw tent full of pawpaw education the whole weekend. We have a heritage tent, and we have a sustainability village. We have all these great local artists and nonprofits, huge kids area, and then we have this massive pawpaw beer garden. So right now, the most pawpaws that we can process in a year is about 12,000 pounds. And I'd say at least half of that goes to beer for the festival. Last year, we drank 92 kegs of pawpaw beer. So come on out, have some fun, learn some stuff, meet some great people. People have gotten married at the Pawpaw Festival. This year, we're going to have hopefully a birth at the Pawpaw Festival. And after you've had a festival for 25 years, I can't believe I'm getting this old, your friends are dying, people die. We have these memorial areas, but now we want to we have this mom's tent for nursing mothers and stuff. So I've been talking to them about who's going to have a baby this year. So we've got one on deck. So, the pawpaws and the mamas. All right. So in your pawpaw, pawpaws grow in patches, and here's the problem with that is that they won't cross-pollinate, okay? So every flower of the pawpaw is female and then male, you know? So I don't know if it's a trans tree or what's going on, but, you know, you got to have cross-pollination. So what they'll do is they'll grow in these patches, and when they're doing that, you're not going to get the cross-pollination. And if they're growing in the woods, you're not going to get that much sun. And so the tree's not going to have as much energy to hold on to the fruit. So in June, this is the time of year where you may see some little pawpaws growing, but then a whole bunch of them drop off, and that's they call that the June drop. And unfortunately, this year around here, a lot of in this region from Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, we got frosted. So like last year we had a really good crop. This year does not look like a great crop. So, but that's Mother Nature, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So anyways, if you have pawpaws on your property, you may want to thin them out a little bit. And when you're doing that, you can graft other varieties into, okay, because there's people that there's patented pawpaws out there right now, actually. So Kentucky State University down in Frankfurt, they're the germplasm repository for pawpaws. And there's a guy named Neil Peterson. He started the Pawpaw Foundation, and he's like Mahatma Pawpaw. And he's also got patented pawpaws. So he names his after rivers, you know, in the U.S. So he's got like Shenandoah, Susquehanna, Rappahannock, Potomac, Wabash. You know, I think he's got 6 or 7 that are patented. And then also Kentucky State has a bunch of varieties. So at the Pawpaw Festival, we have a best pawpaw competition. And this little village of Albany that I live in, it's like got like a couple hundred people. And like 25 years ago when we started doing this, I was like, hey, do you guys want to make your official village tree the pawpaw? And they said, oh, okay, we hate pawpaws, but sure. Because around here, you know, a lot of the old timers, they're like, yeah, I'll take 1 or 2 a year. That's all I need. You can have the rest. And I'm like, sweet, I'll buy them from you. And that's what I try to do with people is, you know, if landowners have them on their land and want to sell them, you know, like they have to pick them and then we'll buy them. Now, there's a lot of people that are, say, unemployed in areas of rural America. And this is a great opportunity for them to make some money. And I've worked with people who've made enough money during pawpaw season to put a new roof on their house. So we buy as many pawpaws as we can. And they've gone up. When I started, they were worth like 50 cents a pound. You know, now they're worth like $5 a pound. Like this year, who knows what they're going to be worth, because the demand is going up. There's people planting pawpaws. There's this excitement about pawpaws. But unfortunately, sometimes Mother Nature doesn't cooperate, and you know, then the supply is not there, and then the price goes up. So if you want to get some pawpaws on your property, I did bring some little seedlings. If you wanted to, they're like $5 each. It's a great thing to put along like the edges. Okay, so with the goats, we milked goats, made goat cheese, and just had to sell my goats last year. So I'm going through goat withdrawal a little bit. But goats, you know, the only problem that I would have is like sometimes they'd rub their horns on it, you know, but they wouldn't eat the leaves or anything like that. And it worked really great. So if anybody wants some trees, I want to sell you some. I brought some. And I also brought some of this stuff because, okay, pawpaws go from hard as a rock to rotten in about 24 hours. We freeze it, but then we make stuff because that's like the limiting factor with pawpaws. Like you're not going to probably see them at Kroger's. You know what I mean? Maybe the farmer's market. But I mean, if any of you guys are going to a market and you're selling, you know, your bison, if you had some pawpaws, I mean, pawpaws, you can sell them for $10, $15 a pound. So it's something else to just kind of maybe incorporate into your, you know, your whole farm scheme. Let's see. Okay, so grafting is, you guys probably haven't grafted, but it's really not that hard. It's like performing surgery on a tree, you know, and you got the cambial layer, which is the layer that you can't really see, but it's right underneath the bark. And you get cuttings from, like, say you have a tree that produces these massive 1 pound, because there's a guy in southern Indiana that has pawpaws that are over a pound. And you take a cutting from that tree in the winter, put it in the fridge, and then in the spring, like say April, May, when the trees are just, that's when you graft onto them. And then that's how you can increase your cross-pollination, and then you can basically improve the varieties of pawpaws that you have on your property. So yeah, those are some of the things. I mean, pawpaws are pretty nutritious. There's been some changes in the literature. Like there's a lot of science going on with pawpaws right now because there hasn't been a lot. And I used to have this memorized where I would say, pawpaws are higher in niacin, calcium, phosphorus, manganese, magnesium, iron, copper, zinc, protein, and fat, and higher 7 of the 11 essential amino acids. So that was based on this study that was done back in the 80s, but now they've redone the study because when they did that study, they included the skins of the pawpaws, but most people don't eat the skins. I don't know. Has anybody eaten the skins of the pawpaws? No, usually you don't because they're gritty and a little bitter. So they redid the study, and now they're not higher in all those things that I kind of said a million times in my brain. So I've got to retrain myself. They're high in fiber, okay? If you eat a lot of pawpaws, you may poo-poo, okay? And some people, that's important to some people. If you're, not regular, eat a couple pawpaws, it'll work out, all right? So, gosh, I could go on and on about pawpaws. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
What period do you freeze them in? Like when you guys harvest them, do you wait till they're ripe to harvest and freeze, or do you...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So in my ideal world, like the sugar content, it's like ideal world, you're out in the pawpaws and you put your hand out and it falls right in your hand, right? But, for me, I like them off the ground. Don't go out and shake the tree, okay? That's one of the problems so we live in a college town. These college kids, they hear about, what's a pawpaw? I'm going to go get one. And they go out and they see them, they shake the tree, and they get these hard pawpaws, okay? And they're white still on the inside, and they don't taste very good. And they eat them because they don't know what the heck they're doing. And then, unfortunately, they get very nauseous. Those powerful annonaceous acetogenins, that guy, Dr. Jerry McLaughlin, they did these studies, okay, where they tried to they did it on dogs, and they tried to OD dogs on these annonaceous acetogenins. Won't kill you, but it'll make you feel like you want to die. I mean, it's unfortunate. And we really try to train people, don't ever eat the pawpaw until it's ready. So in here, there's a how to pick the perfect pawpaw. So understanding when is a pawpaw ripe. And, it'd be nice if we had some fruit there. But sometimes they grow in clusters, and they're almost sticking up, okay? And you can watch them because let's just say this is a pawpaw, and this is the stem. Okay, say it's sticking up like this. As it gets ripe, it sort of sags. And right here, where that stem joins the fruit, that's where it gets ripe first. So as it gets ripe, it kind of falls down and then it just falls off, right? So you can learn when a pawpaw's ripe by, looking at them like that. We have a little tool, we call it the Pawpaw picker. It's like a modified apple picker because apple pickers, they're too small for a cluster of pawpaws, and then those metal fingers and stuff, they bruise the pawpaws. So we have this thing with a bunch of duct tape and foam, but it works, and you get it up there in the tree, and if you jiggle it a little bit, if it comes off, it falls in your soft padded basket. So we ship pawpaws to people, and when we ship pawpaws to people, we can't ship them a ripe pawpaw because by the time it gets to them, it's like this puddle of, fruity goodness, which, so we have to pick them slightly underripe. Refrigeration is really important. If you can get them in the fridge ASAP, you're buying yourself time. If you leave them out at room temperature, they're just going to continue to sort of ripen. And so, yes, very short. And that's why it's cool because we have the festival at the peak of the season, and it's sort of like an experience, And if you don't get there before the possums, the raccoons, the foxes, everything else in the woods that's eating pawpaws, you're not going to get them. So, but if you get there too early and they're not ripe, you really don't want them. So it's a lot of understanding that opportunity of a pawpaw. It's like effervescent. So how about another question? You know, they call them the Indiana banana, the Kentucky banana, the West Virginia banana. I mean, I don't know. They may call it the Ohio banana, but let's see. Come on. Any other? Yes.
This isn't a question so much as just like a brief anecdote, but I was introduced to pawpaws by my grandfather, and the first time that I ever went pawpaw hunting with him, he did what you said not to do and shook the tree. And I was looking up when he did that and got smacked in the face by a really big one.
Yeah.
And it like busted my nose and there was blood everywhere.
Oh my, yeah.
So that's like another reason that you probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that has happened. We've had pawpaw pickers with black eyes, believe it or not, from that stuff. You know, they grow really well in the riparian zone. They like sandy, well-drained soils. Last couple years in this part of the country, we've had a lot of rain at times. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, it rained for like 6 weeks straight in the spring. And that really put the hurt on a lot of pawpaws. In that I used to go to, they were in people's backyards, you know. We lost a lot of trees. We probably lost a third of the pawpaw trees. And I think it was because we had too much rain. And the you know, the ones on the rivers and stuff, they seem to do fine. They're not getting, you know, basically suffocated. And I think when they were in the clay, any clay soil like that, it just held it. And they, in that time of year, they're really, you know, growing and stuff, and they suffocated. And, you know, it really sucks because, like, you know, like spent like years of my life working on this, and stuff like that happens. It's like, oof. But luckily there's other native plants that I also work with, like spicebush and black walnuts and persimmons and ramps. So like to do other things too. So yeah, another historical comment is a good way to identify the pawpaw in the winter even is the bud of the pawpaw. And you may have heard of John Audubon from the Audubon Society. He was a painter and he painted birds. Well, a lot of his bird paintings, he would use the bud of the pawpaw. They call it a cinnamon paintbrush bud. And so he would paint with that bud. That's a good way to remember it. So when you're out maybe wandering your land, this guy who was over here was just saying he just discovered he had a bunch of pawpaws on his land in Indiana. So, well, any other questions? Yes, Carrie. Well, that's the annonaceous acetogenins. Yep, those are the fatty acid molecules, you know. So, yeah, you can buy that stuff. There's different companies that sell it, but we've actually sold bark and twigs because that's where it's the highest. So, like, say you were thinning out, and you can make this tea at home if you want, but you don't want to do this lightly. But if you know somebody who's in chemotherapy treatment, that's where it comes into play. Because what it does is it weakens your cell's ATP function, and it weakens the cancer cells enough that the chemotherapy will knock out the cancer and kill it. So it's very potent on that. If you look up, you know, pawpaw medicine, one tricky thing though, down in the southern hemisphere, what we call papayas, they call pawpaws. So just be aware of that. You know, if it's Australia or South Africa or some other place, they may be saying pawpaws, but they're talking about what we think is papayas, but they're calling it pawpaws. I don't know. And, you know, but the relatives of the pawpaws, I don't know. Has anybody been to Mexico? You may have had a guanabana. Anybody had a guanabana? Yeah, that's like a cousin of the pawpaw. And that's how one of the reasons I got into pawpaws was I got to study abroad in Mexico, and I was eating these guanabanas or soursops, and I was like, God, these are good. And they have these big seeds. And I was like, man, those look like pawpaws seeds. And I'm like, and I just started kind of connecting some dots. And I'm like, and I got back home and I'm like, why are all these pawpaws just rotting on the ground? And why don't we do something with them? And that's sort of how it all started. And yeah, the pawpaw is going to be, and it is the biggest next fruit that people are really excited about. That Journal of Heredity back in 1916, they were working, is it going to be a pawpaw or is it going to be a blueberry? Well, they picked the blueberry, but now the blueberry is taken care of. So now it's going to be the pawpaw. And that there's all these scientists, all these grad students all over the country at different research institutions from Kentucky State, Ohio State, probably, I know Iowa State, whatever, that are trying to understand all this stuff about how to grow the best pawpaws and what you're going to do with them and all that stuff. I could have had a PhD, but I just mushed a lot of pawpaws in between. And yeah, it's a very labor intensive process, but if you do have pawpaws at home and you want to process them, you take the skins off, and unfortunately, like, we just do that by hand. So, and you can imagine if we freeze 6 tons of fruit, we're kind of talking about 24,000 pounds of fruit. I mean, so it's like we do a lot of mushing of pawpaws. It's a technical term. But I hire as many people as I can that, will show up, and they don't have to pass a drug test. But if they will show up and, it's tough work, but we basically wash the pawpaws, take the skins off, and then we use a machine to take the seeds out. So luckily, but if you're at home and you want to take the seeds out, an easy way to do that is like a citrus bag or an onion bag. You put that, and the seeds will stay in that bag, and you can kind of squish out the pulp. You can put a little bit of ascorbic acid or lemon juice to keep it from oxidizing, because the pawpaws will turn brown, and that's not as, it's like brown frown. It's not the best. So yeah, those are, if you come to the Pawpaw Festival. Carrie, maybe this year you need to do a bison talk there. I mean, they are native foods, right? And who knows? Who knows? This is another historic thing. Back in 1502, the Spanish explorer Hernandez de Soto, he was coming up the Missouri River. This was one of the first notations that he was noticing native cultures down there were gathering pawpaws and doing some sort of processing. So who knows what they were doing? One thing I've noticed is, like, when we take the skins off, we have all these skins and stuff, and I'll compost them because I'm sustainably minded and all that. And, it's weird. That pawpaw stuff it'll like be yellow, like literally like 5 years later. Like if it was in a pile of stuff, so I think there's a lot of chemical stuff going on in the pawpaws that I don't think we completely understand yet. But all right, number 1 lesson, never eat an underripe pawpaw. Okay. Number 2 lesson, if you eat too many pawpaws, you will poo-poo. Okay. So the key is to focus on, never eat a pawpaw until it's ripe. So if you do shake the tree, some of them that are less ripe are going to fall out. You can try to ripen those up at room temperature. But the flavor is always better. It's almost if you can just get it right at the right time. So just be patient. On drought years, they're going to fall off faster than, like a moist year. And I think I've kind of I've gotten all my pawpaw knowledge out there. But if you come to the Pawpaw Festival, I welcome you all. We've got music, camping, stay all weekend. You'll have a good time, and you'll probably learn stuff and meet some nice people. So I thank you for your time. And if you want to buy any stuff, I got my trucks over here. I just came from the farmer's market, so I've got Pawpaw popsicles too. I got Pawpaw mango or Pawpaw raspberry. Those are just like Pawpaw smoothies in a bag. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and good luck with your bison farming.